Okay, the regular meeting of Lakewood City Council for September 5th, 2023 is hereby called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. As is our custom, we will now pause for a moment of silence. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Baker?
Here.
Bullock? Absent. Keppel? Absent. Litton?
Here.
Marks? Here. Rader?
Here.
Schachner?
Here. Move to excuse the absences of Vice President Keppel and Councilman Bullock.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Reading and disposal of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held July 17, 2023.
Move to dispose without the necessity of a reading.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. And if for no other reason but to honor Coletta Graham's memory in almost always having the last word when she attended council meetings, I'd like to move item 3 to the top of the agenda so that she may have the first.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Wait, is that a motion? Or can we just do it? I think we just do it. Yeah, that's what I thought. But thanks for seconding nonetheless, Councilman Rader.
Item 3, communication from President Litton and Mayor George regarding resolution to posthumously honor Coletta Graham.
Mayor George, I'll defer to you if you'd like first, and we'll go about from there.
Dear colleagues, please join us in supporting the following resolution to posthumously honor the life of Lakewood resident Coletta Graham. Along with her husband, Edward Graham, Coletta Graham was a resident on Chase Avenue for over 50 years and a proud parishioner of St. Luke Church. Through her high level of civic involvement, including attending and participating in countless Monday night city council meetings, Coletta Graham developed a well-deserved reputation as a concerned citizen and one of Lakewood's most engaged and active residents. Ms. Graham wrote letters to the editor, ran for public office multiple times, and spoke out on matters affecting Lakewoodites. Her participation in the political process and undoubtedly improved the quality of life for her fellow citizens. Coletta Graham's extraordinary attentiveness to and participation in civic and political life are to be applauded. Please join us in honoring the life of Coletta Graham.
Thank you. If I may just say a few quick words, this is something where, to be honest, there were often very few things that Mrs. Graham and I agreed on when she would come to Lakewood City Council meetings. And I don't say that begrudgingly. I don't say that angrily. I say that because the discourse of this body and our allowance to have members of the public come and speak their minds and make their opinions heard is really the most important thing. It's that ability to be able to talk things out as a community that makes us a strong community. And it is with that in mind, above all else, that I really wanted to make sure that we honored Coletta Graham's legacy as someone who spoke her mind, spoke up when something bothered her. There would be times when we would come to meetings, or I would come to meetings, Councilman Marks, I'm sure, remembers as well, where it was like, uh-oh, the Grahams are here. And that is, in hindsight, not something negative necessarily, but again, something to be remembered in terms of a public discourse that we had as a city about important issues, countless important issues over the last few decades here in Lakewood. Colleagues, anything else you wanted to add? Councilwoman Marks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to acknowledge Mrs. Graham for having the courage to fight for her beliefs, and I really respect that. She was very vocal, And I wish we could have followed her lead, but I just really acknowledge her very much for having the courage and strength to stand up for her beliefs. More of us should do that, so I appreciate her family being here. Thank you.
This isn't to say that all of council disagreed with her either, by any means, but Councilman Rader.
Thank you. Just want to express my condolences, add, Mike, to your passing of your mother. You know, I got to know her a little bit through the Save Lakewood Hospital movement, and she cared a lot, and just want to say I'm sorry, and I'm glad you're here tonight so we can honor her. Thank you.
Absolutely. With that, I also wanted to invite up Mr. Ed Graham, former councilman Ed Graham, to speak, if you'd like to say a few words. I don't know that you need 5 minutes, but you can take more this once if you.
On behalf of the family, I'd like to extend our thanks for the kind recognition. And I would mention that when I was cleaning out Coletta's purse, I found this wrinkled up piece of paper in it. And I'd like to share it with you. This is dated April 9th, 2015, so she's had it in her purse a long time. Letter to the editor. Dear editor, this was sent to the plain dealer. The people of Lakewood and others who benefit from Lakewood's hospital need to leave their easy chairs and get in gear if they want to preserve this fine institution. On April 15th at Lakewood City Hall, a public forum is scheduled on the proposed closing of the hospital. Don't let this chance you have to let the mayor and council members know that closing the hospital is not an option. Slip by without your participation. $500,000, your money, has been wasted on a study to rationalize the hospital being torn down and the citizens' valuable property being given away to the Cleveland Clinic. Some questions you might want to ask our mayor, who has committed to the clinic rather than to the city on this matter. That was a different mayor than presently serving, I would add. Some questions you might want to ask that mayor. How did Lakewood benefit by closing the trauma service at the hospital? How did Lakewood benefit by closing the pediatric service at the hospital? How did Lakewood benefit by closing the laboratory service at the hospital? How did Lakewood benefit by closing the cardiac rehab service at the hospital? How did Lakewood benefit by referring patients away from Lakewood to Fairview? How did Lakewood benefit by closing the cardiac surgery service at the hospital? Why is there such an urgency to close the hospital when the clinic has a legal duty to run the hospital for the next 11 years? Those 11 years haven't passed, I would add. Could it be that the clinic wants all Lakewood's equipment for its soon-to-be opening Avon Hospital for free? By the way, what bus can one take if they were to go to the Avon Hospital? You have a chance to let our leaders know that closing the hospital will not be tolerated. Be there at Lakewood City Hall on April 15, 7 p.m. Let them know that it's not a done deal. Stand up for our rights. Remember, united we stand, divided we fall. Coletta Graham. So for those of you who weren't serving on council, and that these are the types of issues that were raised by Coletta. And I would simply add on my own that those questions have never been answered. Thank you for this opportunity. And thank you for the acknowledgement of Coletta's service to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. I am not the least bit surprised that even from beyond the grave, Coletta's words would be remembered here at City Council. I'm reminded of something I've been thinking about a lot lately, but a book called The Four Agreements. And the Four Agreements, I'm going to have to write them down quickly so I wouldn't miss one. One is to always be impeccable with your word. One is to not make assumptions. One is to always do your best. And lastly, to not take anything personally. And in my approach to people I agree and disagree with, I hope that I conduct myself that way. And I would ask that of all of us in memory of Coletta Graham and her strong legacy here in the Lakewood community. With that, unless there are any other comments, I'll move to receive and file this communication.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. And moving on to item 4 next, but once we pass the resolution, we will then take a quick picture with the family, and we'll all go about our evening. And Grahams, you need not stay any longer than this, even though I know Ms. Graham stayed plenty longer to wait till public comment at the end of meetings. Item 4.
Item 4, Resolution 2023-40, a resolution to posthumously honor Chase Avenue resident Coletta Graham and to express condolences to her family, friends, and the many who have been touched by her determined and passionate spirit.
Move to adopt. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes unanimously. Let's take a quick picture with the family.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
As we move on, but before we do officially to our next item on the agenda, I did want to invite Mike Graham to also say a few quick words, if you have a moment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. On a personal note, there's a lot of people in the room here who've been very kind to our family, and I want to say thank you. And there's a lot of people who've showed a lot of grace. Thank you for the resolution. You know, obviously, sometimes my mom, maybe more than sometimes, didn't see eye to eye with people, but it's appreciated, the resolution, and it is a really kind gesture, so thank you.
Thank you. Much appreciated. All right, we'll move on to item 1.
Item 1, ordinance 17, 2023, an ordinance amending Section 13505 traffic guards of the codified ordinances for the purpose of allowing the mayor as Director of Public Safety to hire more traffic guards.
Move to defer.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 2, ordinance 16, 2023, an ordinance to take effect immediately authorizing the transfer in advance of certain funds.
Move to defer.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. Item 5.
Item 5, communication from Councilmember Shackner and President Litton regarding hearings to discuss the 2024 budget.
Chairman Shackner, would you like to take the honors?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. So it's coming upon that time where we discuss the budget. The budget usually kicks off in November, and typically we do want to have council input prior to the finalization of the budget, but also want to give the administration enough time to hopefully incorporate some of our recommendations. There's something else that we implemented last year that we would like to do again, is to give an opportunity for residents to present at a finance committee meeting and provide their views and their input of what they want to see in the budget. I believe last year that this resulted with some additions to the skate park that came through during that meeting and that were incorporated into the administration's budget. Already I've been hearing people talking about tennis courts or interest in supports for tree removal and things like that, or dangerous tree removal. So anything that a resident feels that should be a priority for the city, they are welcome to join the meeting and share their presentation. I am planning on having this meeting on September 25th. I wanted to schedule this during a council day, but unfortunately, that didn't work out in terms of scheduling. I apologize for any inconvenience, and I just want to thank the directors and their staff, and any staff that has to appear in their stead, that do attend, for taking the time to ensure that people's voices are heard and their input is heard on the future budget of the city. So thank you in advance. Move to receive and file this communication.
And if we may also add a referral to finance, I think.
Yes, move to refer to finance.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? I look forward to a robust budget discussion therein, and also want to remind any colleagues that may have remaining American Rescue Plan Act funds to disperse, that we try to do so by the end of the year too, and perhaps we use those discussions to help us do so as well. On the motion to refer to finance, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 6, communication from President Litton and Mayor George regarding update to increase bidding and border control thresholds to match Ohio Revised Code.
Mayor, I'll take the lead on this if that's okay. Dear members of council, since 1984, the city of Lakewood bidding and border control threshold levels have been established via ordinances listed here. These ordinances set a minimum bidding threshold and board of control approval for the city to enter into any agreement and contract at $7,500. For professional services contracts, the minimum threshold is $5,000, and this amount has been in place since 1995. As the city is often competitively bidding for goods and services in an increasingly tight labor market and supply chain, these low threshold levels have made it increasingly difficult to compete with many statewide municipalities and townships who follow the thresholds established by the Ohio Revised Code. For example, any procurement of equipment, vehicles, or vehicle parts by the Public Works Department for a value of more than $7,500 puts the city into a competitive disadvantage, as our bidding counterparts can be much more efficient in their approval process. We respectfully ask for your approval to update our nearly 40-year-old municipal ordinances and its low threshold limits to mirror the language of the Ohio Revised Code, which currently permits a threshold limit of $75,000. Increasing these amounts will put Lakewood on par with its fellow cities and townships bidding and contract processes and will result in an ordinance that is in keeping with the times and allows us to remain competitive during current market conditions. I'll simply add in introducing this that I'd hope for a robust discussion. Our city had some challenges back in the mid-90s that necessitated this threshold to be changed the way that it was. And it's out there for public consumption if you want to understand it further. I don't believe, especially given the city's track record across administrations, not to mention this competitive issue that exists, that we ought to at least consider some form of raising that limit just so to keep up with the times, so to speak, or at least be as competitive as we can be as a city. And with that, I will also move to receive and file this communication. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Councilman Baker.
Thank you, and I look forward to this discussion when we have it in presumably Finance Committee. But as we kick off that discussion, I don't even think I'm on Finance Committee, but one of the things I will be attending to ask questions about this and understand what other local municipalities are doing, kind of what their limits and thresholds are, I think would be helpful to have kind of some context about what we're requesting here. And then also, I know there's a difference between bidding and then, which requires a certain amount of like public notice, and then there's like, you can request quotes, so some other sort of competitive process. Cleveland Metro Parks, it's 50 grand is kind of our board approval, threshold. So I'd like, this may be just to kick the number for bidding, but I think some other thoughts about how we handle what is bidding versus what kind of competitive process versus getting quotes. And there are distinctions between all of those things. I would expect a healthy discussion on those points and look forward to finding a way to, make the administration nimble enough to do what they have to do, but also make sure council has a role too.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I expected it to be a robust discussion in committee. Any further discussion? All right. Hearing none on the motion to receive and file. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 7, Ordinance 18, 2023, an ordinance to take effect immediately establishing new purchasing limits in line with the Ohio Revised Code for the City of Lakewood.
Move to refer to Finance Committee. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none and acknowledging Finance's robust calendar going forward. Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 8, communication from Mayor George regarding appointment to Board of Zoning Appeals.
Mayor George.
Dear members of council, it is my pleasure to announce the appointment of Matt Markling to the City of Lakewood Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm grateful for his willingness to continue volunteering his time, energy, and knowledge to improve the quality of Lakewood. His qualifications, know-how, and dedication to our city will be an asset to this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 9, communication from Director Vargo regarding Help Foundation agreements.
Law Director Vargo.
Thank you, Council President and members of council. This is a proposed ordinance regarding the city's agreements with Help Foundation for concession services at Cove Community Center and Lakewood Park for Foster's Pool. Help Foundation has operated the bistro at Cove Community Center since its opening and has served as the city's concession provider at Foster's Pool since at least 2017. The ordinance allows for an extension of both agreements through August 31, 2024, which will also align the duration of each agreement. Help Foundation is a nonprofit with the mission of providing work adjustment training for individuals with developmental or injury-caused disabilities. The administration recommends continuing its relationship with Help Foundation and respectfully requests adoption of the ordinance. I'd just like to add, as a reminder, Help Foundation was here and presented to council in April, I believe, of this year with respect to the bistro, and I think it was council's recommendation, which made great sense, that we coordinate both agreements, the Foster's Pool and bistro agreement, so that we can do this once a year. This essentially does that, given that the Foster's Pool concession or the bistro, one or the other is expiring at the end of September, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. I know this is probably the earliest we've discussed this topic, kind of, usually coming into a summer where this has come to the fore. As you said, Law Director, we discussed it in April, and they came to join us in April. But given that timeframe, I would, I would still hope to discuss it in committee, even if only briefly, just because I think it's an important arrangement and unique arrangement that we have in our city. Not that there's really a whole lot to, I think, be concerned about or anything like that. So I think I'd be most of a mind to refer to Public Works, but Health and Human Services also seems to make sense just because the Cove Community Center largely falls under that department. Any opinions, colleagues?
Mr. President? It's been under Public Works for a while. I feel like I'm pretty familiar with it. I wouldn't mind running that conversation. I do feel like it's predominantly an administrative sort of function, and we're kind of performative here for the most part, but, Public Works makes sense. We'll try to make it speedy.
Yeah, particularly because I think that this relationship has grown, and it's a new thing, a new place that the Help Foundation has entered into helping us with. So, at any rate, I will then move to refer to Public Works and Sustainability Committee. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. President?
Councilman Baker.
Yeah, and I appreciate the law department and the administration getting out in front of this so we can have a good conversation about it. And I agree it's a little perfunctory, but I also think it's good to have a public meeting with them and kind of understand what their challenges are and things. So I would ask that before that meeting, if the law department could share, we always use the amendment, but just so we can refresh ourselves in advance of the Public Works and Sustainability meeting, have the original agreement as well, so we can have context. Thank you.
Be glad to.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Clerk Bach, reminding me that we are only on the communication at the moment. So with that, I will amend my motion to refer the communication, or I'm sorry, receive and file the communication. Second, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 10, Ordinance 19, 2023, an ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into 2 amended lease agreements for the operation of the food concessions at Lakewood Park and the bistro at Cove Community Center with Health Foundation, Inc., pursuant to Section 15508 of the codified ordinances.
Now I will move to refer to Public Works and Sustainability Committee. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 11, communication from Public Works Director Gordon regarding 2024 Lakewood CDBG Streets Improvement Program, Lakewood Heights Boulevard.
Director Gordon.
Thank you. Dear President Linton, members of City Council, attached is a cooperative agreement with the City of Cleveland for street improvements needed for Lakewood Heights Boulevard from Jocelyn Road to Berea Road. The roadway encompasses Cleveland and Lakewood right-of-ways, and sections of concrete pavement will be rehabilitated as part of the 2024 Lakewood CDBG Streets Improvement Program. The City of Lakewood will administer the project. Please see the attached legislation required for this project. I request that Council approve the attached legislation such that the cooperative agreement with the City of Cleveland can be processed. Please let me know if you have any further questions.
Thank you. I'll first move to receive and file that communication. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. President?
Councilman Baker.
Love the collaboration. Would just love to see Fisher Road in a similar agreement like this soon. We share a border with the city of Cleveland, and it's in rough shape.
We'll cover half the bricks. What's the? It is unique. And with that, actually, in talking about uniqueness, Director Gordon, does this include the curve that almost ramp-like road piece part area?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. There's one good lane and one really bad lane over there.
That's why we're here.
Yes, precisely. Glad we're on the same page. Any other further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. And I'll only add that our chorus is a bit light tonight, so want to make sure I know where you guys are voting when we're doing so. All right, item 12.
Item 12, Resolution 2023-41, a resolution to take effect immediately to enter into an agreement with the City of Cleveland for street improvements for Lakewood Heights Boulevard from Jocelyn Road to Berea Road.
Well, given the timing aspect of this and the collaborative nature of it, I'll move to adopt. Motion's been made and seconded, and given that motion, I would hope for some discussion if there is any concerns.
Mr. President, yeah, if we're moving to adopt tonight, I guess I'd like to understand from the Public Works Department, is time an issue here for bidding, and kind of where are we at?
It can go either way. I think if I recall correctly, it was going to the City of Cleveland City Council on September 18th. I can answer any questions.
That means there's time. It's knowing Cleveland City Council. No offense, guys.
I'll leave you to say that, so.
I've been there, yeah.
No comment. I have to work with them too much.
I guess Mr. President, can the
Certainly.
Public Works Department kind of give a description of the project extents and kind of how costs will be split, since we won't have the opportunity, based on this motion, to talk about it in committee?
Sure, no problem at all. The project's going to consist of full-depth concrete replacement, ADA ramps, curbs if needed. We're in the design phase right now, and Cleveland will be responsible for their percentage of the road, and Lakewood will be responsible for theirs. So it's pretty cut and dry, to be honest.
Where are the termini at for the extents of the paving?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
What's the stretch of Lakewood Heights? Is it Bunce over to Bridge?
No, Jocelyn to Berea Road.
Jocelyn is the equivalent of Chesterland for Lakewood purposes, so Chesterland eastward and into that curve. So a smidgen of Ward 3 and the rest is Ward 4. And what is the percentage breakdown anyway between Cleveland and Lakewood?
I don't have that exact number yet. We're still in the design phase, but it is a general understanding between both cities that the percentage would be split based on the boundaries.
Okay. Understood.
Who has responsibility for that bridge deck?
That might be the county maybe, or Cleveland? To my knowledge, that is not ours. You might have stumped me on that one, but.
And is any aspect of the bridge deck part of this project? Or is it merely paving even though it's going all the way down?
I don't recall it being a part of this project. I think it was just the concrete depth repair replacement going down. But I'll be honest, we were just most concerned about the Lakewood side, so.
No, understood.
And Mr. President, we are letting the contract, is that what I'm to understand?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
we will, I'm sorry. We will administer the project, yes.
I call that a good thing,
President?
generally speaking. Councilman Rader?
I guess two-part question. If, totally hypothetical, but if the city of Cleveland were to not agree or their terms were not, the portion they were willing, the council was willing to spend, would we proceed with our half of it? Does this authorize us to proceed without Cleveland's participation? Or if there was some problem where we didn't agree or didn't come to some consensus, us agreeing to enter into this agreement, would this go back to the drawing table? Would it come back before us? What's the process at that point? Again, hypothetical, hoping Cleveland, and I'm sure this will proceed, but I do want to know in that situation what would happen.
We would still move forward.
Okay, good.
And given the nature of it being CDBG funding, is there an exact set amount that we are allocating? I don't think I looked.
Not at this time. Again, we're still in design to get all of the exact final costs.
Okay, so other CDBG projects, or lack thereof, might be dictated by the ultimate size and scope of this project?
Potentially.
Okay. Okay. And is there even a guess? Is there even a guess at the amount required, given that comment that,
I would say Cleveland's is maybe 500K and ours less.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Again, that's just me shooting off the hip right
Sure,
here,
no,
but-
but I appreciate those comments. Any further discussion?
Just one thing.
Councilman Schachtner.
I think I may have to abstain from this because I might have eyes or hands on either the crafting of the legislation for the city of Cleveland or even the actual contract.
Understood. Understood, okay. Well, the count taught me well, and I think we're still okay on this one, potentially, anyway. All right. Yes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to adopt, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
And that motion passes.
Item 13, communication from Public Works Director Gordon regarding OPWC Grant Program 2025.
Director Gordon, it's your show tonight.
Thank you. Dear President Linton, members of City Council, the Fire Department, Water and Wastewater Collection Division, and Division of Engineering and Construction are recommending submitting grant and loan applications to the Ohio Public Works Commission for the 2025 water main replacement project. The 2025 water main replacement project would entail replacement of existing 6-inch diameter lines, 4-inch fire hydrants, lead service lines, sewer rehabilitation, and pavement resurfacing at the following 3 streets segments: Northland Avenue, Delaware to Hilliard, Northland Avenue, Madison to Detroit, and Norton Webb to Granger. Please see the attached legislation required to be submitted with the grant and loan applications for these projects. I request that City Council approve and pass the attached resolutions so that the grant and loan submittal process may proceed. Please let me know if you have any further questions.
Move to receive and file that communication. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. And Director Gordon, I could be accused of being sarcastic or facetious, but when you say, you commonly say in your communications, I request the City Council approve and pass. I would assume you always want us to approve and pass anything you're putting before us, but does that mean quickly necessarily or not? And we could or couldn't do that as a council. We could decide on our own. But I want to understand the tone of your letter, not tone, but the expediency that you require or wish for.
If I'm putting in there nicely like that, I'm asking for it to get approved quickly.
Okay. Appreciate the niceties. Well, then we'll know. I'm sure we'll know. All right. On the motion to receive and file, any discussion?
Mr. President?
Councilman Rader.
Follow-up question on yours. To just speak to the expediency a little bit. What's the time pressure? What's the deadline for the application?
The quicker we can get it in, the better off we will be.
In terms of winning the correct amount, is that the idea? The sooner you get it in, the better chance you have at getting the higher dollar amount? Okay.
That is correct. And we don't have a set amount right now because we don't want to show our hand.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, I've oversaw a lot of these hearings. Oversaw, is that a word? Okay, well, it is now. I oversaw a lot of these hearings. I feel pretty comfortable moving forward as expediently as possible. We've managed to acquire a lot of funding from the state for these types of projects by being judicious and moving quickly. So I would support that tonight if that's what Council President wants to do. So.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further discussion?
Just be great, Mr. President, if Norton went quicker, but I understand that you need to plan longer term. That street's in rough shape. But Director Gordon knows that. So.
And I'm sure you wouldn't let them forget if you didn't. All right. On the motion to receive and file, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 14, Resolution 2023-42, a resolution to take effect immediately, authorizing the Director of Public Works and the City Engineer to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission Capital Improvement Program, Local Transportation Improvement Program, or any other appropriate Ohio Public Works Commission program that the 2025 water main replacement project qualifies for, and to execute contracts as required.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Real quick, just since we're not
Councilman
having a hearing. Thank you, Mr. President. Refresh my memory, there's both grants and there's like low-cost to zero-cost loans and forgivable loans. Can you explain a little bit about that, you know, applying for these particular funds and just a little bit of general understanding of the program so we know what we're getting into would be great. Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Sure. So we're going to obviously apply for a grant. Should we receive the grant, we would move forward with that. If we do not receive the grant, we will get with the finance department and discuss loan opportunities as we have done with previous projects, 0% interest loans, things like that. So to put it lightly and put it blunt, we swing for the fences at first and then work our way back from there.
Great. And one more follow-up question.
Sure.
The fire department's very involved, right, in determining some of these aspects of flow to these hydrants and things. I don't know if maybe the fire chief could speak to these particular streets if we have a moment.
Sure, he would absolutely love to talk right now.
Thank you, Councilman Rado, through the chair. I every year do a review with Engineer Papke and the Director of Public Works. This year was no different. They send over a recommended suggestion to the streets that need to be repaired and plan to make those necessary repairs to increase and make sure that we have good, adequate water flow in the time of need for the operations of the fire ground.
That's all I have, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
And just to note, this is a grant that we have applied for 10 years plus, and we've gotten every year, so knock on wood that the trend continues.
Very good. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 15, communication from Police Chief Fisher regarding adoption fees at Lakewood Animal Shelter.
Chief Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear members of council, following my correspondence is a resolution, if adopted, that will raise the adoption fees for both dogs and cats from the Lakewood Animal Shelter. The fees have not been increased in several years. Currently, the cost for adopting a cat is $50 and a dog is $70. These fees are minimal compared to the cost of vetting an animal when required and having the animal spayed or neutered and vaccinated for rabies. I am requesting that the fee for adopting a cat or kitten be raised to $75 and the adoption fee for a dog or puppy be raised to $100. These are nominal increases when considering rates charged by surrounding animal protective leagues and will better help the shelter cover its expenses when taking an animal in and readying it for adoption. Please forward this to the appropriate committee for further discussion.
Move to receive and file that communication. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 16, Resolution 2023-43, a resolution to take effect immediately to increase the adoption fees for animals that are adopted through the Lakewood Animal Shelter.
I'll move to adopt, but have some questions. Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded, and I'll dive right into the discussion. Is there a rationale behind the exact amount we're raising it, or anything like that? Is it to say that we're just in keeping with other shelters?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, it's not an exact dollar amount, but it definitely is low for the area, and with increasing costs, it will help the animal shelter be in a better position to absorb some of the costs.
And might you know off the top of your head a guesstimate of how many adoptions we might have on an annual basis?
I wouldn't. Give me a couple months, more months as chief, and I'll get that back to you.
Okay. Even just like on email after the fact, last year's data would be nice, or
Sure.
whatever it was last year, just to have a reference point.
Absolutely. It's mostly cats.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Councilman Rader.
My preference would be that this go to committee, just because I know there's a number of members of the public that may want to have input. I do see the fees as reasonable. I did look up the Animal Protective League, as you mentioned, and it is quite a bit higher when you take in consideration the puppy fees and all the other fees they add to it. And it seems reasonable, too. because I'm sure our costs exceed that, I have no doubt. But still, I think there are members of the public that may want to understand this change a little better before we move on it so quickly.
Understood. Fair enough. I'll amend my motion to refer this resolution to public safety.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Councilwoman Marks.
Thank you. I think it would be a good idea to also pass this through Lakewood Animal Safety and Welfare Advisory Board. I don't think they're going to have any objection to this, but it would be nice to include them in this as well.
And without a motion of this council, can it be sent to the committee to review? That. Okay.
And they have a meeting in a couple weeks, so I can introduce this to them at that meeting.
Okay.
Easier to just make the motion.
All right, well, then I will once again amend my motion to refer this resolution both to the Public Safety Committee and to the Lakewood Animal Welfare and Safety Advisory Board.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded for the third time. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 17, communication from Police Chief Fisher regarding donation of in-kind veterinarian services.
Chief Fisher, once again.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear members of council, Roberts and Went Animal Hospital has, in past and continuing, donated in-kind veterinarian services to the city of Lakewood for animals that are taken into Lakewood Animal Shelter. Upon fulfilling the requirements of LCO 111.14, we are notifying the Lakewood City Council of this donation.
Thank you. Move to receive and file. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Very kind of this veterinarian to provide those services. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 18, liquor permit notice, BSMC LLC at 14810 Detroit Avenue.
And I am unsure off the top of my head what ward we're in here. It looks like Ward 2. So we'll defer to the council member in whose ward this permit notice resides. Councilman Schechner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I find no statutory reason to object. I'm excited for this place to open and get going.
All right, we'll move to file without objection. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 19, liquor permit notice, Birdie Town LLC at 12501 Madison.
In this case, I will defer to Ward 4, Councilwoman Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no reason to object.
All right, then I will move to file without objection. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 20, liquor permit notice, Dolgen West LLC at 13215 Detroit.
And on this one, I will move to defer at this time. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. And with that, now is a time in our meeting where we would, in Coletta Graham's memory, have public comment. And so if our new Council Deputy Clerk Danielle Cariglio, did I say that right? Cariglio, thank you, Harji, could grab that sheet so we know who's speaking this evening, we would appreciate it. And the first individual signed up to speak is Jean Powell. And please correct me if I mispronounced a last name. And you're welcome to go together. If you don't mind stating your names and your address for the record, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
We've spoken with Chris prior to the meeting, our concern tonight is the flooding that occurred on August 23rd. The majority of the houses on our street, as many streets in that area of Lakewood, flooded. The basement was seriously flooded. It ends up being a great burden, a great expense to the homeowners. It ended up costing thousands and thousands of dollars to just get our basement cleaned up. So I know there are insurance claims and all of those things that can be filed, and that's very nice if it's a one-time occurrence. However, we know that several houses in Lakewood had that occurrence in July and then had it again in August, and our concern is that this is going to be an ongoing problem. I've lived in the house for 34 years. I have never had my basement flood back up from the drain, and I really don't want that to happen again. So I guess our purpose in being here tonight is to ask why and what's the plan to assure us that it's not going to happen again. I'm sure it's not a surprise to anybody anywhere that if it continues to happen, it's going to affect our property values. And we can't have that happen. So,
Yeah, well, the
things to add?
main thing we're concerned about is do we as a city know what's happening that caused that? I'm not an engineer, but I know I've been involved with the wastewater projects in the past and in my businesses. I've also been involved with stormwater management. And I know it's a pretty detailed process to know the mechanisms that are involved and how they intertwine. And this is an older community, so I'm sure under the ground it's quite a pretzel as far as what our systems look like in our infrastructure. So I'm sure it's not something that can be answered very quickly or easily, but I'd like to know that somebody is really looking into that and making sure that something strange isn't happening, like maybe the Hilliard project is somehow impacting what's between Hilliard and the highway. I'm not accusing that or saying that that's a suggestion, but that's an example of what I think could be uncovered if we really looked into it, or if somebody would look into it. I don't want to cause any additional expense to the city as far as engineering analysis or expertise in evaluating what happened, but some common sense look at it and just scratching heads and talking with the guys who know what they're doing to find out what's happening here. Because as Jean said, over 30 years of her owning that house, she hasn't had any water in her basement. And now to suddenly have it happen, and a second time for her neighbor across the street along the same plane, east to west, it's kind of fishy to me as far as something's happening that we should find out what's going on. So that's all we're asking. If we can check into that and give us, in our local community area there, a little bit more assurances that it's not going to happen again, because the bottom line for all of us is we don't want the property values to deteriorate. It's a great community. It's got a big uptick as far as value and the place to live. It's a desired community for people to want to come and live. We don't want to have something like this give us a black eye. So if you guys could give us a little support on this and check in and let us know what happened and what we can do to make sure it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to withhold comment, and I ask the administration and my colleagues to do so as well, just simply because the next public commenter is here to speak on the same topic. So I think we'll summarize our comments and reply to the end of those public comments. But thank you for coming up here to speak. We appreciate you being here. Next person signed in to speak is Jason Weiner.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor George, council, directors, employees. My name is Jason Weiner. I live at 1304 Andrews Avenue. My wife, Chris Williams, and I have owned our 1950 home since 1998 and have lived there ever since. And of those 25 years, we've experienced severe weather, including bouts of extremely heavy rain, but we've never had water in our basement. We used to observe light surface moisture, maybe a musty smell. At times when the ground would become overly saturated, we kept an eye on it, and when finances allowed, particularly over the last 15 years, we've invested a lot of money into replacing our gutters, replacing a portion of our sanitary line, removing trees, replacing our front steps. We've got a driveway project that's going to tilt the water in the right direction in the hopper. And replacing and doing waterproofing and replacing a foundation wall of our home. So a lot of money and time has gone into creating a watertight space as much as you possibly can. Starting in last fall, the work on the Andrews and Gladys Infrastructure Improvement Project began. Aside from the short-term challenges that a project like that brings, we welcome the long-term benefits that an important project like this will have on the future of our street, of our city, and on the health of Lake Erie. Things seem to be proceeding well until this summer, and a series of storms, both heavy and typical in nature, hit Lakewood. Most notably on July 28th, following a heavy rainstorm, what appeared to be a mix of storm and sanitary water came up and pooled about a 1 to 2 foot diameter area around our laundry room drain for an unknown period of time. Numerous residents on our street experienced more severe backup and flooding in their basements. I administer a communication group for the street, sent out requests, and received plenty of comments about flooded and concerns about flooded basements. On August 23rd, during another heavy rainstorm, sanitary and stormwater entered our basement again via our laundry room drain, this time completely filling the basement with 4 inches of water. Sewer water. Our basement remained submerged for about 2 hours, and again, this was experienced by numerous residents on Andrews Avenue, as well as throughout the city, as we all know. So for us, that August 23rd event resulted in the loss of significant amount of personal property. We've been in communication with the city that evening, and in subsequent days, we've taken photos of the rising water and where it was coming from. We took time off of work to clean the mess ourselves, to remove soiled carpeting, emptying out the ruined contents of our basement, disinfecting the floors and the walls, and other items that could be salvaged. So that work continued through the weekend. We documented the damage and disposed of everything on the tree lawn, and we're grateful to the city for picking that up. Future work includes having to tear down and replace drywall and paneling. We're anticipating a recovery cost of approximately $10,000, less than some, more than others. We're fortunate to have some insurance which will cover a portion of the cost, but not all of the cost. So we're aware that throughout the city, many residents have experienced water in their basements. We don't feel ours is a situation where our basement flooded because water seeped in through the walls or up through a crack in the floor caused by a broken pipe or clogged gutters, something along those lines. Lakewood did get a lot of rain, and if those issues existed in our home, it would make sense that that's the kind of flooding we would have get, and it would explain the situation perhaps in others' homes. In our home and several other homes on Andrews, that's not what happened. In our home, sanitary water mixed with storm water and came up through a drain in our basement, and there's nothing that we could do to prevent this. We understand that the infrastructure replacement project on our street involves separating wastewater per EPA requirements, eliminating the overflow of the sanitary from the storm. We know that they were separated in the project, and we've been reassured that the new storm and sanitary pipes are indeed the same size as the ones that they replaced and should be able to handle the volume. But something is still causing stormwater to enter the sanitary line on Andrews. The volume of the two combined is more than the now newly isolated sanitary line can handle. So we're asking for, we're asking for a solution so we can remain in our city of, in our home, and our home does not become uninhabitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, and you've been very active in Lakewood for a number of years, and we thank you for your service there, and appreciate all of you coming up here to speak about what has been an important issue. I'm sure I'm not the only one up here and who's not able to be here tonight, of my colleagues who were answering calls and emails and texts that evening when people were kayaking on I-90. And I know I personally drove through 3 or 4 different streets before it got that bad, and had never seen anything like it. That underscores one of my quick points, which is that this was a 100-year rain after 2 50-year rains that we've already had this summer. I'm not an expert on that. Someone can determine if that's factual, what I'm saying there, but it feels like something very, very unusual that happened here in Northeast Ohio that night, and continued throughout the evening as well. Sewer infrastructure, and I'll just state a few facts as I know them, and I'd hope and expect the administration to add a few points. But sewer infrastructure, our wastewater treatment system, et cetera, was designed, Mr. Saloy, is it? You described it as a pretzel. I've described it oftentimes as having been designed by Dr. Seuss. It was something created 100 years ago in mishmash fashion across our city as small bit projects over time. And what that creates is a very, very, very inefficient and odd system to keep, maintain, work with, and ultimately fix. And so what our city has done over the past, I would say, decade or so, and will be doing probably for at least the next 25 years, is investing tens of millions of dollars. We've already invested tens of millions of dollars, and we'll invest tens of millions more directly to our wastewater treatment and water flow issues as a city. This has been a priority and will be a priority. It's just not one of those things that's exciting, even though it's one of the things we might spend the most money on annually as a city. It's something we've been looking at for a very long time because we know it's an issue. Every time one of these rains happens, there's water. All that sewage where it can go is out into the lake, unfortunately. So we've been doing what we can also to limit that flow into the lake and get as much of it into our wastewater treatment plant as possible, and increase the percentage of our rainwater and sewer water that goes into our wastewater treatment plant for treatment. And then lastly, just for some perspective, our city ultimately received or will have received $48 million in American Rescue Plan Act dollars, or ARPA dollars, $25 million of which we immediately, together with the mayor, allocated to this issue. And that was 2 years ago or so, a year and a half ago, I don't know. So it has been a priority. It's just, I wish I had more answers, but I know the administration has been dealing with this issue more readily and immediately as we've been trying to answer questions for our constituents. I don't know, Mayor George or Director Gordon, did you have anything further to add?
Thank you, President Litton. Mr. Weiner, to you directly, we very much appreciate your support to this whole project. I know you've been very supportive of the work that we're doing on Andrews, and we appreciate that, and we're sincerely sorry for any inconvenience that you're experiencing. Along those same lines, rest assured that Andrews Avenue is at the top of our list, and all hands are on deck to continue moving forward with modifications that are needed with that project, both in-house and out of house. It's at the top of everybody's list. So we don't want to rush a decision and just do something just to do something. We are making sure we're doing as much extensive research as we need to figure out exactly why these issues may have occurred, and ultimately to provide the next steps. So that's the best way I could put it right now. To follow up your comments, the early July storm, I think, was a 15 to 20-year storm, if I recall, and the August storm was a 30-plus year. So unfortunately, in under 60 days, we've experienced some very significant weather, short but very intense rainfall events. And as I'm reading my notes here, some of the storms classified as high as a 40-plus year storm event. And unfortunately, these events can cause surcharging and backups and overflows to occur in any wastewater collection system. But again, that's why we're allocating all the money necessary, and we've developed the IWIP program to address the performance of the system and meet regulatory requirements. So we continue to grind forward with updating our Dr. Seuss and pretzel system that we have, and we will continue to be proactive with it and put all of the necessary steps in place to continue to make the necessary modifications.
And I'll only add to that, none of this is being spent frivolously or without a whole lot of planning, working very closely with the Ohio EPA, and now have a consent decree further that stipulates that we make these improvements. So it's something we've been working toward for years. Councilman Schachter.
Thank you, Mr. President. And first, I would like to thank a lot of the residents in my ward that were impacted by this flooding. Thank you, Jason, who's been a leader on Andrews Ave and on many other streets, Summit. There's people in French, Virginia, Emily. I've received multiple emails from the neighborhood over there, and a lot of what I've heard is neighborhoods working together, neighbors looking out for each other, helping with their neighbors' basements, trying to guide them through the process. So I want to thank you all for, enduring this and helping out your neighbors and really being leaders and spending the time to come to council and speak for not only yourself, but pretty much everybody here who lives in Lakewood. I also want to thank Chris and the Public Works Department, who has really been bombarded with questions and inquiries from council. I know that. I know for me, especially, I've been contacting them nonstop. And also to the employees of the Public Works Department, especially Refuse, who spent extra time to clean up everything that our neighbors had to throw out. And with me, and I appreciate the communication back and forth, and I also appreciate the acknowledgement that we have been working on this, and it's a long project, and I would say it wasn't designed by Dr. Seuss. I say it wasn't designed at all. It was just built as people got indoor plumbing, and then it was pretty simple. It just goes out into the lake. I mean, not that complicated, but when you're trying to change that, that's when it gets complicated. And I think everybody acknowledges that. My concern is that I have two projects in my ward, water main infrastructure projects with Gladys and Andrews. I have two more on the horizon on Revelry and Elmwood in the near future, which should be starting in October. And I think it, and this is just a comment, because we don't know, and I don't know, I haven't received any information to the contrary for or against, but if any of the projects have impacted the flooding or had an effect or not an effect, or if we don't know, I think that's important for residents to be aware of. And if we don't know at this point, I think it's important for residents to know what concrete steps we are taking to find out. I think it would also be important that if anything has to be redone, I think people on Andrews Ave, although it has been a long project, they were prepared for a long project. I'm looking back at the original emails that, yes, it's a year-long project, that I believe the residents of Andrews would understand if the road has to be torn up a bit, again, in order to fix an issue that was unanticipated. That happens. That happens with projects and buildings and all sorts of complicated infrastructures all the time. And I think the sooner, not asking anybody to rush anything, but the sooner that the residents are advised that that is a concrete possibility, I think the more palatable and more prepared the residents can be for continued construction. I think it would also be important for residents to know, and I would like to know, that how the city is tracking reports of flooded basements, how the city is keeping track of what areas are being contacted. And I know it's kind of ad hoc, we're receiving calls through council on certain streets, but we have a record of that we could provide the administration if it helps. We're individually getting emails. I know I forward, if not the majority, if not every single one of them directly to Director Gordon, the majority to Brian Shields or Papke or Gordon of the streets or the houses that are impacted or the calls I'm getting. I can't speak for everybody on council, but I think it would be important in some sort of posting on the website, just outlining exactly, not exactly, but outlining, it would be helpful for me to explain to residents that are asking me questions, to direct them to a resource that would list where the city has received reports of flooding, what the city is doing to inquire into the reasons for that flooding. And we all understand that this is a process and that you're not going to have an answer right away, but I think the residents, from what I hear, would appreciate just knowing what steps are being taken or what steps are being planned on being taken. And again, thank you for all. This has been a lot of sleepless nights for a lot of people working for the city, trying to address this, and just holding our breath for the next. I know a lot of residents are holding their breath for the next big rain event, and I can rest assured that everybody who is either on the city council side or on the administration side are also holding our breaths and for the next big major rain event, and we're all trying to be prepared and proactive. But again, thank you to all residents that are reporting their issues, because that is really the only way we can find out they're existing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Any further comment? Councilman Baker.
Yeah, and excellent comments by Councilman Scheckner, and I also want to recognize, I live near I-90 and listened to the dispatch that particular night on August 23rd, and police, fire, dispatch all did a phenomenal job. I-90 was closed, and there were people underwater and swift boat rescues, and it was a natural disaster situation. So I want to thank Public Safety Forces for that as well, and I know Public Works worked overtime as well.
I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the public safety forces. Sorry about that, guys, a little public focus on infrastructure, but thank you for all your work that night.
I want to make sure they get plaudits. They were up all night. And then another thing, and I think all of us have to be mindful of this. We are hyper local in Lakewood because that's where we live and that's where we serve. Many of my colleagues in my day job live all over the West Shore communities, Bay Village, Westlake, Rocky River, and I assure you this was not just a Lakewood problem. Each one of those communities had numerous flooding incidences, and so the one thing I would, be, and I want to work with the Public Works Department, I want to work with Engineer Papke. The thing that's a little troubling is, and they're right, well, this was a 40-year event, this was a 15-year event. I think our models, we have to look at them and think about what that means in this era of severe weather and what it means for our infrastructure. I'm not an engineer, so I don't want to sit on this dais and suggest engineering ways to fix it. But 4 inches of rain in 4 hours, there's no sewer system in Northeast Ohio or the country that can absorb all of that. So the question is what happens to the outfalls with a system that's overloaded? And that's where getting into the modeling and kind of, to the other council people's point, we're a system of systems. That's the way Lou McMahon describes it when he comes to and comes to our council meetings. So they're hyper-local. So Emily Avenue might have a little system that was built when Emily Avenue was built, and then it connects into the larger system, and that connection point might be where the issue is, right? So really good modeling, really good engineering, and when the model changes, the engineering has to change, and that's where I'd be interested in working with the administration, putting our money where our mouth is as a council. We appropriate funds and we apply that direction. So I'm certainly willing to do that. But I just want to also discuss the fact that this is not uniquely Lakewood. There are communities in Bay Village that their basements have had feet of water in it 5 or 6 times this summer. And that's not to say that we should be happy with what happened, but it's just that what we're dealing with is not unique. And also I think it's and I hope our Public Works and our engineering staff have coordinated with those West Shore communities as well. I know we do a lot of coordination with them to understand what solutions they are looking for. so that we can be smart about it and quick about it as we can be. But a resident sent me a video of literally his basement toilet overflowing with water. It was, I mean, I've had flooding in my basement. I've never had anything like that. And you got work, you got family, you got things you got to do, and there's literally, water coming out of your toilet. It's hard to, comprehend, but we had 4 inches of rain in 4 hours, and that's a lot of rain. But I'm interested in doing whatever we can do to help remedy the issues as much as we can.
Including financial if necessary. Any further comments? Administration, any further comments? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for your participation this evening and for a good public discourse. We began our meeting with it in a way and have concluded it that way as well. Any updates or announcements from my colleagues? Any updates or comments from the administration? All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. We're glad to have everybody back from our council recess. Well, not quite everybody, but close enough. We have a quorum at least, so that's good. So I'd like to welcome everybody back from our council recess. I also want to welcome a couple of newcomers to our council staff, namely, and I beat myself to the punch a little bit, but our new deputy clerk, Danielle Cariglio, welcome. Thanks for being here. And our new council intern, Corey Stofko. Welcome, Corey. I know this isn't intentional, but you went to high school with my son, which makes me feel extremely old. At any rate, with that, I will move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.